The morning sky of the alien capital was a dull gray, heavy with clouds that looked almost tired. The wind carried dust and the smell of metal, drifting through tall stone buildings that rose like cold towers over the people below. In the center of the great plaza stood a wide stone circle called the Square of Purity. It was not a place of mercy. It was where the proud Ythrin people brought those they wished to disgrace. Hundreds of aliens gathered there that day, their skin colors glowing faintly under the thin light of the suns. They came to see punishment, not justice. The crowd murmured in cruel excitement, waiting for the guards to drag out the one they called the traitor. Captain Daniel Reeves stood at the edge of the crowd, silent and still. He was a human soldier sent from Earth as part of a peace mission after years of conflict. The long war between humans and the Ythrins had ended only weeks ago, but the wounds of hate were still fresh. The treaty had been signed, yet neither side truly trusted the other. Reeves' orders were clear: observe the local customs, report back to command, and do not interfere. But what he saw that morning was not something he had ever imagined. The alien guards entered the square, their armor shining blue under the dim light. Between them walked a woman tall, thin, with long silver hair tangled and dirty. Her violet-tinted skin was marked with dust and bruises. Her wrists were tied before her, and her eyes, large and bright, looked empty. The crowd hissed and shouted as she stumbled forward. Some threw bits of garbage fruit skins, sand, broken stones. Each hit made her flinch, but she did not fall. Reeve frowned. What's her crime? He whispered to his translator device. The small metallic orb at his collar spoke softly in English. Her name is Liren. She is accused of treason. During the war, she refused to build mental weapons against the humans. She saved captured soldiers instead of destroying them. Reeves' jaw tightened. So mercy is treason here, translator clicked. They say mercy weakens unity. Liren was forced to the center of the plaza. A large officer shouted words in the alien language, his voice echoing through speakers around the square. The crowd cheered each sentence. Reeves' translator tried to follow. He says she is stripped of honor. He says her name will be erased. He says her compassion brought shame to the Empire. Then the guards tore away the light cloth that covered her shoulders, leaving her exposed to the cold wind. Gasps of satisfaction filled the air. Rotten food and dirt rained down again. Reeves' stomach turned. He had seen war, but this felt worse. This was the kind of cruelty. It came not from rage, but from pleasure. The human soldier clenched his fists. He had promised to follow orders. But in his heart, something heavy began to burn. His people had known humiliation before. Humans had once chained, broken, and beaten each other for centuries, and learned painfully. That dignity was not something to take. Liren stood there shaking, trying to cover herself, her eyes downcast. She did not cry. She only whispered something under her breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a goodbye. The alien officer shouted again. The crowd roared. And that was when Captain Daniel Reeves stepped forward. At first, no one noticed the human move. His black uniform and silver rank patch made him stand out, but the crowd was too loud to care. He walked through them slowly, pushing past the aliens with calm force. When they realized what was happening, the noise faded. A few guards raised their weapons. What is this? Someone shouted. The human cannot interfere. Reeve ignored them. His boots echoed on the stone path as he entered the square. His heart was beating fast, but his face stayed calm. He reached the center and stopped beside Liren. She looked up at him in confusion. Her lips parted as if she wanted to warn him, but no sound came out. The officer barked something in anger. The translator hissed in his ear. He orders you to leave, human. This is not your law. Reeve said nothing. Slowly, he removed his heavy military coat, the newest one he had been given for this mission. It was black, long, and lined with the small flag of Earth on the shoulder. He held it in his hands for a moment, staring at it. It had taken him years of service to earn that symbol. Then he stepped closer to the woman and placed the coat gently over her shoulders. The crowd gasped, as if struck. The coat fell around her like a shield, covering her from the cold and the eyes around. Laren stared at him, disbelief flooding her face. For the first time in days, her trembling stopped. Reeve stood beside her, silent, calm, unarmed. The wind lifted his shirt slightly, and the alien officer shouted again, furious. "What is this human doing?" The translator whispered. "He says, 'You are breaking sacred law.'" Reeve raised his voice so everyone could hear. His tone was steady, low, and filled with quiet strength. "If showing kindness is against your law," he said, "then your law is wrong." No one moved. No one spoke. Even the rain that had begun to fall seemed to hold still in the air. The officer signaled the guards to arrest him, but Lyran, still weak and half-broken, stepped forward and stood between them. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "No," she said in her language. "He has done nothing wrong." The guards hesitated. They had never seen defiance like this, not from a human, not from one of their own. Reeve looked around at the faces staring back at him. Some were angry. Others looked confused, even ashamed. "Look at her," Reeve said, pointing at Lyran. "She showed mercy when you only wanted destruction. And now you humiliate her for it? This is not strength. This is fear." The officer barked another command, and the guards surrounded him. But no one touched him. The air was heavy, electric. Reeve stood his ground. "We fought a long war," he continued. "You lost many. We lost many. But if this is what peace looks like, then peace is just another war." Lyran's eyes filled with tears she had not allowed herself before. They were not tears of pain, but of shock that someone, a stranger from another world, would stand for her when her own people would not. The officer shouted again, louder, ordering Reeve's capture. One guard stepped forward, but an old alien woman in the crowd suddenly spoke. Her voice cracked like stone breaking. "He covered her," she said. "He did not strike. He covered her." The words spread like a whisper through the plaza. He covered her. The human covered her. And then something rare happened in the square of shame. The crowd grew silent, not with hate, but with doubt. Some lowered their eyes. Others stepped back. The guards looked uncertain. Reeve stood there, water dripping from his hair as the rain fell harder. Lyran held the coat close around her. Her body was shaking again, but not from fear, from something else, something she had forgotten long ago. Hope. A drone camera floated above, recording everything for the city's networks. Across the capital, people saw the image of the human soldier standing beside the disgraced woman, both soaked in the rain, both refusing to bow. The broadcast cut off a minute later, but the image remained burned into every screen. Every heart. When the guards finally moved in, Reeve did not resist. They grabbed his arms, shouting orders. Lyran cried out, trying to hold on to him. He turned his head slightly and whispered to her, "Don't be afraid. The world is watching now." The officer shouted to end the spectacle, but he knew it was too late. The act had already changed everything. What was meant to be a lesson of shame had become a symbol of defiance. The crowd no longer cheered. They just watched in silence as the guards dragged the human away. Lyran clutched the coat tighter. It was far too large for her, but it felt like the first real warmth she had felt in months. The fabric still smelled faintly of metal, smoke, and something humane, a scent she would never forget. The rain turned the square into a gray mirror, washing away the dirt and garbage that had been thrown at her. The people began to leave, quiet and thoughtful. No one looked proud anymore. From that day, whispers began to spread across Ethera. Some said the human was foolish, others said he was brave, but most said the same simple words: he covered her. And for the first time in generations, the people of the capital began to question whether cruelty truly made them strong or only made them hollow. Rain fell steadily over the alien city, washing the plaza clean of the humiliation that had happened earlier. The streets shimmered with puddles, reflecting the tall stone buildings like mirrors. Lyran clutched the human coat tightly around her shoulders, still trembling from the events of the morning. It was too large for her small frame, but it felt like a shield, protecting her not just from the rain, but from the world that had betrayed her. She did not understand why a human would care. Humans were warriors of the stars, killers in the war, people she had been taught to fear. Yet this one had done something she could not forget. He had stood against a crowd of thousands, defied an entire empire, and offered her warmth when everyone else had turned their backs. Captain Daniel Reeves sat in a small alcove at the edge of the city, dripping wet but calm. His hands were steady as he unpacked supplies from his satchel. He had promised to follow orders, to avoid interfering with local customs, but some things could not be ignored. The sight of Liren in the plaza had changed something inside him. This mission was not just about peace anymore. It was about saving someone from needless cruelty. Liren followed him silently, her steps careful on the wet cobblestones. She was still nervous. The guards could return at any moment. She had seen the expressions on their faces in the plaza, the mixture of confusion, anger, and doubt. And now, she realized, doubt could be dangerous. Reeve noticed her hesitation and smiled gently. "You are safe for now," he said. "But we cannot stay here. They will come for us soon." Liren nodded but did not speak. Her throat felt tight. She had no words to describe what she was feeling, a mixture of fear, relief, and a strange new hope. She had survived the morning not through her own power, but because someone believed in her. That belief was stronger than any weapon, stronger than any law the council could enforce. They moved through narrow alleyways, avoiding patrols and drones. The city was unfamiliar to Reeve, but he had studied the maps carefully. He knew where they could hide, where the patrols were least frequent. Liren tried to follow his movements silently, watching him as he moved with purpose and care. Each step seemed to tell her something she had not understood before. Humans did not fight only for victory, fought to protect. After an hour of careful travel, they reached an abandoned temple at the outskirts of the city. The stone walls were cracked and worn, covered with vines and moss. It smelled faintly of incense and old rainwater. Inside, the space was quiet, almost sacred, and for the first time that day, Liren allowed herself to breathe freely. Reeve set up a small fire in the center of the temple. The flames flickered, casting shadows across the walls. He handed Liren a small metal cup with water. She took it with trembling hands, grateful for the warmth and the simple kindness. "I am Daniel," he said softly. "Captain Daniel Reeve, Earth Army," Liren nodded. "I am Liren," she said. Her voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You saved me." Reeve shook his head. "No. You saved yourself by standing tall. I only helped you do it." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the rain tapping against the temple roof. Outside, the city continued to move, but inside this small temple, the world felt different, safe, simple, real. Liren looked at the coat again. It was large and heavy, but it smelled faintly of smoke, metal, and something else, something human. She had never felt warmth like this before. It was not just the physical heat of the fabric, it was the weight of someone believing in her, someone choosing her over fear, over law, over everything. "I do not understand humans," she admitted. "All I knew was war, cruelty, and law. But you acted differently." Reeve smiled. "Humans are strange. We fight wars, yes, but we also fight for mercy. We do not leave people to suffer if we can help them. Some call it weakness. I call it strength." Liren stared at him, trying to imagine a world where kindness was strength, not a crime. For her people, mercy had always been the enemy of power. To act kindly was to risk everything. But this human had risked everything to protect her. The thought made her heart ache. Suddenly a low rumble shook the temple. Reeve looked up, alert. "A storm is coming," he said. The wind picked up, rattling the broken windows and sending leaves and small branches spinning across the floor. Rain began to pour harder, drumming on the temple roof like 1,000 tiny hammers. Liren shivered. Reeve stood and adjusted the fire, making sure the flames did not go out. He tore strips from an old cloth he had packed and offered them to her. "Cover yourself with this too," he said. "We cannot let the rain chill you." "You have already been through enough," she nodded, wrapping herself carefully in the extra cloth, holding the coat close around her shoulders. It was the first time she felt truly protected in days. Outside, the storm raged. Thunder rolled over the city, and lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the distant towers like fleeting ghosts. Reeve glanced at the city below and whispered, "They will send guards soon. We cannot stay here forever." Liren's voice trembled as she spoke. "I cannot go back there. Not after everything." "You don't have to," Reeve said gently. "We will find a way. But first, we survive the night." The hours passed slowly. They shared what little food they had, and Reeve told her stories of Earth, of deserts, mountains, oceans, and skies full of stars. Liren listened, fascinated. Humans were warriors, yes, but they were also storytellers, explorers, and protectors. She had never imagined such a world could exist. By midnight, the storm was at its height. The temple shook as lightning struck nearby towers. Rain fell in sheets, turning the courtyard into a small river. Liren sat close to the fire, watching Reeve move around calmly, adjusting supplies and making sure they had enough heat. She realized that despite the storm, despite the danger outside, there was something she could rely on, the human who had saved her. "Why did you help me?" she asked finally, her voice barely audible over the storm. Reeve paused, looking at her. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said simply. "Because no one should have to face the world alone. Because someone had to stand for mercy." Liren looked at him, struggling to understand. "Mercy is not weakness?" "No," he said firmly. "Mercy is strength. It takes courage to be kind when everyone else chooses cruelty. That is what makes humans. Humans!" She thought about the morning in the plaza, the garbage, the shouting, the humiliation. She had been alone, terrified, and hopeless. And yet one human had stood by her. One human had risked his life, his mission, and his orders, to cover her, to shield her. And in that act, the meaning of strength had changed for her forever. The night passed slowly. Liren slept lightly, the coat wrapped around her like armor. Reeve kept watch, listening to the rain, feeling the weight of the responsibility he had chosen. Outside, the storm continued, relentless and harsh, but inside the temple, fragile warmth endured. As dawn approached, the rain began to ease. The city was quiet, shrouded in mist. Reeve looked out a broken window, scanning for patrols, drones, or anyone who might be following them. "We have a window," he said. "We can move now." Liren rose slowly, careful not to disturb the fire. The coat hung heavy on her small frame, but she felt stronger, braver. The storm had passed, and with it, a small part of the fear that had ruled her life. She had survived humiliation, and she had survived because of someone else's courage. Together, they prepared to leave the temple. Reeve packed supplies carefully, checking weapons and coms. Liren followed, holding the coat close and taking careful steps across the wet floor. The rain had stopped, but the streets would still be slippery, still dangerous. Guards could appear at any moment, but neither of them looked back. As they stepped into the misty streets, the city around them seemed different. The buildings, the towers, the stone streets, they were the same, but the eyes of the people watching were changed. Some had seen what had happened in the plaza. Some had heard the whispers. The human covered her. That small act, a single gesture of kindness, had begun to ripple through the hearts of thousands. Liren glanced at Reeve. "I do not know if my people will forgive me," she said softly. "You do not need their forgiveness yet," Reeve replied. "You need to survive first. And then, maybe you can change things. One act at a time." For the first time since the humiliation in the plaza, Liren smiled, a small, quiet smile. The storm had passed. The night had passed, and a new day was beginning. And for the first time, she did not feel completely alone. The human soldier and the alien woman moved forward together, stepping into the mist of the alien city, their paths uncertain, their hearts determined. The coat still draped over Liren's shoulders, a symbol of courage, warmth, and hope, a reminder that even in a world of cruelty, one person could make a difference. And far above, The first weak rays of sunlight broke through the gray clouds, touching the city with light, soft and promising. The mist of early morning hung over the alien city like a soft veil, hiding streets and buildings in gray shadows. Captain Daniel, Reeve, and Liren moved quietly through the alleys, careful not to make a sound. The city was waking, the first citizens stepping out into the damp streets, curious and cautious after the storm. Yet for Reeve and Liren, the real danger had only begun. The Council of Why. Thera would not ignore what had happened in the Square of Shame. A human had dared to defy their traditions, and a traitor of their empire had been shielded from disgrace. Such an act could not go unanswered. Patrols and drones would search for them, and soldiers would follow any trace left behind. Every step could lead to confrontation. Reeve's mind worked quickly, calculating paths and escape routes. He motioned for Liren to follow him, keeping low and moving with purpose. "Stay close," he whispered. "We cannot fight them all, but we can outthink them." Liren nodded, gripping the coat tightly around her shoulders. She had learned courage in the storm, but the fear of being caught still pressed against her chest. She looked at Reeve, whose calm determination seemed to shine even in the gray morning. She realized that humans were more than soldiers. They were protectors, strategists, and brave hearts rolled into one as they turned a corner. A patrol of 4 guards appeared ahead, scanning the streets. Reeve froze. He knelt behind a stack of crates, signaling Liren to do the same. The guards moved closer, their weapons scanning for movement. Reeve whispered, "Do not panic. Watch and follow my lead." Patrol stopped, and one soldier bent down to examine a puddle. Reeve seized the moment. He grabbed Liren's hand and moved swiftly along a narrow side path, keeping to the shadows. The guards did not see them until they were gone. Slipping through an alleyway into a quiet neighborhood where the rooftops were lower and the streets narrower. Finally, they reached the remains of an old observatory, a forgotten building that had once tracked the stars. The heavy glass windows were broken, the interior filled with dust and old instruments, but it offered shelter and safety. Reeve opened the door slowly and led Liren inside. "Here," he said, "we can rest for a moment. They will search the streets first, not old ruins." Liren sank onto a dusty bench, exhausted. The coat, still large and heavy, draped over her small frame like a shield. She traced her fingers over its fabric, thinking about the morning in the square. That single act of protection, that simple covering of her shoulders, it changed her life in ways she could not yet comprehend. Reeve poured water into a small metal cup and handed it to her. "Drink," he said. "You need strength for what comes next." She drank slowly, her hands shaking slightly. I cannot thank you enough," she whispered. "You risked everything for me. For someone you do not even know." Reeve shook his head. "I do know you, and that is enough. Humanity has a way of standing up when we see someone suffering. Some call it foolish, some call it brave. I call it necessary." Outside, the city began to stir. Drones hovered briefly in the streets, searching, then moved on. The patrols were still looking for them, but Reeve's careful planning meant they had a head start. He set up a small map on a table, marking potential escape routes and safe houses that he had discovered in his earlier reconnaissance. Liren leaned over the map, fascinated. Her mind had been trained for science and strategy, but never in such a practical, life-or-death way. She began to understand humans in a way she had never before. Their strength was not just in weapons or armor, but in their ability to think, to plan, to act decisively while protecting others. Hours passed as they moved through the city, always careful, always alert. They avoided patrols, slipped past checkpoints, and ducked into narrow alleys when drones scanned overhead. Each movement built confidence in Liren. She was no longer a frightened, shamed woman. She was learning to navigate a dangerous world, side by side with someone who had chosen to believe in her. As the sun rose higher, a new challenge appeared. A larger patrol, armed with energy weapons and drones, blocked their path. Reeve crouched behind a pile of crates, scanning the patrol carefully. "We cannot fight them directly," he whispered. "But we can create a distraction." Liren looked at him, nervous. "A distraction?" "Yes," he said. Watch carefully. When I act, follow exactly. Trust me. Reeve picked up a small container of oil from his pack. He poured it over a pile of debris at the edge of the street and lit it with a small spark. Flames leapt suddenly, smoke rising high into the air. The patrol immediately turned toward the fire, shouting orders. "This is our chance," Reeve whispered. He grabbed Lyron's hand, and they sprinted along a narrow side path, moving quickly and quietly past the distracted guards. The smoke hid their movements, the chaos providing just enough cover. They emerged into a wider street, safer for the moment. Lyron's heart pounded, but she smiled. "You are incredible," she said, breathless. Reeve smiled back. "You're not so bad yourself." "You've kept up perfectly." It continued toward the city's outskirts, moving steadily away from the center. Along the way, Reeve told Lyron about the humans who had come before him, soldiers, explorers, heroes who had risked everything to save strangers. She listened, amazed. This was a history of courage, a history of hope. It was nothing like the stories her own people had told about humans as cold, as unfeeling warriors. Finally, they reached a hidden tunnel leading beneath the city. The entrance was small, almost invisible, and led to an old maintenance network that ran under the streets. Reeve helped Lyron inside, and they moved carefully through the dark, damp passages. The tunnel smelled of wet stone and rust, but it was safe, quiet, and unseen by anyone above. As they walked, Lyron spoke quietly. "I never imagined mercy could be so powerful," she said. "Your single act. It changed everything for me. It gave me hope." Reeve nodded. "Mercy changes everything. And hope is what keeps people alive when the world seems against them. That is the human way." Hours passed in the tunnel, but they finally emerged on the edge of the city, where the ruins of old farms and workshops offered safety. Reeve checked the area carefully, then smiled. "We are safe for now," he said. "We have time to rest and plan our next steps." Lyron sank to the ground, exhausted but relieved. She looked at Reeve, her eyes bright with gratitude. You did all this for me?" "Yes," he said simply. "Because it was right. Because no one should face the world alone. And because humans, we do not turn away from suffering when we can help." The sun broke through the clouds, weak but steady. Its light reflected on the puddles and wet surfaces around them, creating a silver path across the ground. Lyron watched the light, feeling it warm her face. The coat on her shoulders, once a shield against humiliation, now felt like a symbol of something greater: courage, hope, and the possibility of a better world. For the first time in her life, she imagined a future where humans and Eutherans could stand together, where mercy could replace cruelty, where one person's courage could change the hearts of thousands. And she realized that courage was contagious. One act could ripple outward, spreading hope in ways no law, no army, no empire could stop. As they set up a small fire for warmth, Reeve looked at Lyron and smiled. "Tomorrow," he said, "we begin the next step. We do not know what awaits us, but we face it together. And we face it with hope." Lyron nodded. The coat felt heavy, but she no longer thought of it as just fabric. It was armor, yes, but it was also a reminder that someone had chosen her, believed in her, and fought for her dignity when the world had not. The night fell over the outskirts of the city. The storm had passed, but the world was still dangerous. Distant patrols could be heard, the faint hum of drones scanning for intruders. But for the first time, Lyron did not feel powerless. She had survived the square, the storm, and the chase. She had survived because of courage her own, quote, and that of a human soldier who had refused to look away. She watched the fire flicker, listening to Reeve move quietly around the perimeter. Outside, the world remained harsh, unfeeling, and uncertain. But inside the ruins, in the warmth of the fire, they had created a small space where hope could grow, where mercy could survive, and where the future could begin. Reeve sat beside her, offering a small smile. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow, we continue. Together." Lyron closed her eyes, the coat still wrapped around her shoulders. She thought about the plaza, the crowd, and the humiliation she had endured. But she also thought about the human who had stood with her, courage that had shielded her, and the hope that had been sparked in her heart. She understood now. Courage and mercy were not weaknesses. They were weapons stronger than any army. Stronger than fear, stronger than cruelty. And as the fire flickered, casting shadows across the walls, Lyron made a silent promise. She would survive. She would protect the hope he had given her. And one day, she would show her people that kindness and courage were the true measures of strength. For in the heart of that human soldier, in the warmth of that simple coat, she had seen the future of her world, a future shaped not by fear, but by mercy, courage, and the unyielding belief that even in the darkest moments, one person could change everything.